Good evening. How is everyone? This is a great crowd, and we really appreciate you coming out this evening. As Gerald said, he's given you a little bit of introduction, but let me introduce myself. My name is Stan Harvey. I'm with a local urban design and planning firm called Urban Collage, and we are very fortunate to be part of a really dynamic and talented team led by the gentleman over here at the black table, working to advance this project forward. So what we want to do tonight is a few things. As Gerald said, a large part of what tonight is about is an opportunity to continue the engagement that's been begun by GDOT and some of the partners that is only going to accelerate over the next few months. So I think that's an exciting time for this city and for this state. But we want to explain the process. We want to introduce everybody who's going to be involved. So you know the people. You're talking directly to the people who are going to be leading this effort. So we'll give you a little bit of background. I'll try to walk you through, orient you to what the project is about, some of the things we'll be looking at. I'll try to demystify the acronyms that tend to dominate this project and dominate transportation. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time with a panel discussion with our three panelists talking about their perspective on this project, their perspective on what's going on in this country with transportation, transit, and development, and just more importantly, what's going on here in Georgia and in Atlanta, and what this project means to the future of this city and this state. Then I'll come back, we'll briefly talk a little bit about the next steps. As I mentioned, this is going to continue to evolve over the next several months. There's going to be ample opportunities. This is really just, for our purposes, the first public kickoff we've had. And we want to start that dialogue at a high level tonight and talk a little bit about your vision, about what this place can be, and things that you see that could make positive change that this project gives us the opportunity on. So Gerald's touched on this, and I wanted to thank all of the partners. This is, when I come back and I say, we get asked this question a lot. They say, why is this different? We've talked about this project for a long time. This is part of why it's different. This is very unusual that 6 major governmental organizations or quasi-governmental organizations would come together. And I want to thank the 6th one as well, and AJ I think is somewhere around here, and Central Atlanta Progress, who helped us put together and secure this space. And I want to thank Georgia Pacific for allowing us to be here, because this is really a marvelous facility. But these folks started a long time before we all got involved. They've been talking about all the partnerships, and that's evidence of the partnerships that are going to have to continue to grow to accomplish this project. That client team is guiding the project. They're basically serving as the client led by the Georgia Department of Transportation. And Derek Cameron is here, who is the project manager. You'll have a chance to meet and talk to him directly afterwards. But there's kind of 2 parallel processes we'd like to try to communicate. They're related, and they go together. But on the blue side is really the planning and development planning that's going on here. As we'll talk a little bit in a second, this is a different type of public-private partnership, where it's not just a transportation investment and just building a station. It's about all the development that goes around it and how those are interlocked. So we have a team led by 3 development entities: Forest City Enterprises, Integral Group, and Cousins Properties, and you'll hear more from them in just a second. But in a parallel way, there's a part of the environmental assessment and impact that's going on. As I said, going to hear a lot of acronyms tonight. So NEPA is one of them. But basically what it means is that there's a parallel process that the federal government requires to look at what are the impacts of a project like this, particularly something this important and this large. And so a lot of the effort will be this parallel kind of monitoring, discussion, evaluation that will continue over the next 2 years as the NEPA process unfolds, and that environmental assessment of what is this project about. And part of that is, what does the public think about this? What are the impacts, and what are their vision and goals? There's a lot of people involved just on that master planning and development team. These are some of the major consultants that are involved. Cooper Carey and FX Fowl. Cooper Carey, Atlanta-based architecture firm. FX Fowl, New York, transit-oriented development specialist across the country. The transportation planning is being led by Parsons Brinkerhoff and Kimley Horn Associates. And you'll have an opportunity there. Anyone who has kind of a blue name tag, you'll have an opportunity to meet. And then we have a supportive cast of real estate, market analysis, structural, and public relations that's helping support the effort. So what is this about? The Multimodal Passenger Terminal, MMPT. and that yellow area, commonly known very affectionately or not affectionately as the Gulch. So what this project is about is what might happen there, which we've talked a long time in Atlanta about. So we're over here on Peachtree Street at the Star, and so that yellow area just to the west. So basically between here, as you go down to, south of the park and the Dome, but stretching out where viaducts were Mitchell, MLK, Spring Street, et cetera. That's the main part of the study area. So we'll talk about that in a second. So I put this map up here. And I don't put it up here to say, or to allude to the fact that we've been talking about this project for 200 years, although sometimes it feels like it. What I put it up here is to say, before we look to the future, it's probably helpful to look a little bit to the past. And particularly in this city has always been defined by its transportation investment. So this is the next major step in our transportation investment, and there's a lot of transportation investment, fortunately, occurring in this region right now. But that little circle there, the purple circle, is where a long time ago, in the middle 1800s, 3 railroads came together. What was originally called Terminus, then Marthasville, and then finally Atlanta, when they thought it needed to sound a little bit more sophisticated than Marthasville. But it was, at the time, just the bottom of the mountains, and a place west of Decatur, several miles out in the forest, because Decatur didn't want those ruffians, hanging around the railroad. So, but from the very beginning, where those intersected has defined the city. In fact, if you squint your eyes, you might be able to make out the logo of an Atlanta urban design firm there on the right. But that wasn't the end of the investment. We kept growing as a city and as a region. We needed better transportation options, and a system of streetcars was established. You see remnants sometimes around town, the old trolley barns on Edgewood. You even see tracks every once in a while, as we've seen recently. But this network existed throughout the city, going south, going east, going west. And now we're returning to that with the Beltline, with the Atlanta streetcar, and the opportunity to expand that. The multimodal passenger terminal, MMPT, is kind of key part of that network. Originally, we had Union Station that was around where Underground is today. But over time, commerce grew, the city grew, development happened, there was more, need for more, and there's actually a second station made for 3 other railroads, terminal station, which is basically in the Gulch, what the Gulch is today. Also, the Peachtree Arcade, some of you, even the older folks, may not know what that was, but the Peachtree Arcade was a retail and shopping center that was just north of basically MARTA 5 Points. But I think it talks about and shows the way this area has always been a very public place of commerce and connection. Of course, the automobile started to dominate, and we were either blessed or cursed with the viaducts, which has been a challenge. I think we've spent the last 100 years trying to figure out what to do and how to rationalize and how to humanize that. And a big part of this project will be about that. But interestingly, if you look back to the mid part of this century after the war, there was a lot of effort in Atlanta to look comprehensively at the region. It was now a very large metropolitan region, but at the center of it was downtown and the need for public space. And this area around the Gulch, there was even the Plaza Park and others, this idea of open space and this common experience. That's something we as a team want to try, and CAP and the city and other partners have instigated the Green Line study. So we're building upon that work, but open space and kind of public space is going to be a very important part of this project going forward. And then came the added local network. Atlanta has been very progressive in its history in making the next investment for the transportation, and that includes MARTA. So one of the only southern cities to go ahead and make this investment very early that we're now all sharing the benefits of in terms of but that had an effect on the Gulch. So the 5 Point Station and the Omni Station in particular are right there on either end. And so we'll be looking at how we tie in to the existing MARTA subway system. And then more recently, the idea, resurrecting this idea of where Union Station and Terminal Station were and repositioning the Gulch, and the idea of the MMPT has been around for a long time. We've made additional investment in that area, particularly at Centennial Park, the Olympics. We built a major convention center, the Dome, and entertainment center that's just to the northwest of this area. So all that's a little bit of prologue to our conversation, but I think it's helpful to kind of look back and see the interrelationship of development and transportation in this city over time. So I started to allude to this. So why is this going to be different? Well, first off, we have a lot of national and local trends that are favoring this transportation investment. We're having a much more serious conversation, particularly as a region, than I think we've had in many years. We have challenges as a region, and to stay competitive, which I think is something the panel will talk about, this project and other investment is going to be critical. The governmental partners are already united, and they brought in private sector equity and partnership and expertise to help advance it. And that's what ultimately this is going to make this different, is this is about getting something built and done. We've talked about it a long time. Let's start moving towards action. So we're going to have a lot more dialogue, but over this year, I think you'll see tremendous strides forward in terms of getting into the details about how this thing is going to be built and how we're going to pay for it and when it's going to happen. So what is a multimodal passenger terminal? It's kind of the central, it's been said, the Grand Central Station. That's, I guess, a pretty good metaphor for this region, both regional transit and transportation and local within City of Atlanta and within downtown, bringing that all together into one connected spot. So these are all the various modes and pieces that would come into that. A lot of them have to do with rail, from the streetcar network we're reestablishing, the subway, commuter rail, regional rail or Amtrak or other types of passenger rail outside of just Atlanta, and freight rail. That's a very, we'll get into this probably in the next meetings, but talking about how does freight move through Atlanta is a very important part of this conversation. And then all of the other types of transit, both bus, both regional and commuter bus, cars and kind of rental cars. Well, of course, going to have parking, but down in the middle is not meant to be forgotten. As I mentioned, a big part of this effort is going to be taming and creating a bicycle and pedestrian environment in this local area and connecting to these surrounding neighborhoods in downtown and midtown. So a little bit about our study area. It's about 120 acres. It's basically that area I mentioned where the Gulch is today, west of 5 Points, over towards the Dome, and then south as you get towards Castleberry Hill. Somewhere in there will be the actual terminal, which in itself is going to be a very large structure just because of all of the various modes that are coming together. And what we're going to explore is how that might work, how you might get into it, where's the best location, which at some level is a lot of technical information and analysis about how platforms work, et cetera. But just as importantly, we want to look at how you get into it from the rest of the city and from downtown, both for bike and ped, but also for all of these other modes that need to come in there. So how do you get in from the west side, north side, east, and south?